Hello. Time to talk about Kiku, or O-Kiku, or Kikunojo of the Lingering Snow for her full title. I have to say Kiku is my favorite of the Scabbards. I love her of the Scabbards of Odin's retainers. Not that I don't like Shinobu a lot and the others as well, but Kiku is my favorite. So I'm happy to get to talk about her for the next 3 videos for this series. So, Kikunojo of the Lingering Snow, or just Kiku as they call her, is of course a samurai from Wano. She was born in the Ringo region alongside her older brother Izo. She, along with her brother, were retainers of the Kozuki clan, or are retainers of the Kozuki clan, and Kiku became one of the 9 red scabbards, or the Akazaya 9, before Odin's death. She is physically 22 years old. She is canonically 42 years old, because... What are you doing? Dog being funny in the background. So she is physically 22 years old. Chronologically, 42 years old, because she, of course, was part of the group that got sent into the future by Toki. And she is, I believe, the youngest of all of the Scabbards, I believe. Or at the very least now she's physically the youngest of all of the Scabbards, since Inarashi and Nekomamushi age normally. They did not get sent into the future, so yeah, there's that. Brenda. Baby. Yes, you're a baby. See, you're a baby. He's a good girl. So this video will be going over the first part of Kiku's life, from her birth pretty much up until when her and the others get sent into the future. So this will be going over that amount of time, and then the second video will go over from when they arrived in the future all the way up until just before the raid on Onigashima, and then of course, like all the other Scabbards and such, the last video for them will be during the raid of Onigashima. Goes over the raid of Onigashima plus anything else that has happened to them since then. As of the recording of this, the Yamato cover page series has not shown us anything of Ringo or of Kiku. So I still got money, or I still bet on Kiku being the new daimyo of the Ringo region. Don't know exactly how that's going to pan out. We'll find out. I could be right. By the time these 3 videos go up, Kiku might be the daimyo, and I'll be like, ha 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 ha, I was right. Or it'll be like, well, we haven't hit Ringo yet, so I have nothing to say here. I can't confirm or deny this one way or the other. It all depends on how quickly Yamato moves on in his journey. So, into Kiku's history. So, Kikunojo and Izo, I'm just going to mostly refer to her as Kiku throughout this video, unless I'm using her full title of Kikunojo of the Lingering Snow, which I love. I just think that's a great name. So, they were born in the Ringo region, which is the icy, snowy, cold, wintry region, within Wano, where they have the graveyard, where Kawamatsu hangs out for several years, which I'll get to him soon. And they were born there. They were raised by their father, who was who owned the Hanayagi school, which was a dance school. But unfortunately, their family was torn apart, and their father was arrested. I don't remember if we ever find out what he was arrested for, but that led to Kiku and Izo having to survive on the streets, and for Izo to do everything he could to try to provide for Kiku, because she was just so little at the time, so young. So they end up managing to survive on the streets of Ringo, and they're forced to entertain depraved adults, which basically just results in take your pick as to what you think is going on, unfortunately. And Izo would protect Kiku with his like sharpshooter skills that he had and everything. And then we get to during the time of the Odin flashback. And this part is 41 years ago or so. Odin and his well, currently at the moment it would just be Odin, Kinemon, and Denjiro are the three traveling together, and they end up making their way to the Ringo region. And this is like after they've been in the Hakumai region for a little while, they make their way to the Ringo region. And this is where they run into Kiku and Izo. And they end up giving them food. I think it's actually Kinemon and Denjiro that give them food, and Odin's a little bit like averse to it. Because he's like, I don't need any more strays following me around, is basically kind of like his mentality about that. Which is funny. And basically Izo, Kiku and Izo become pretty much, like lost puppies that follow Odin and such around. And they eventually, they take them in and they, start, they help take care of them and everything else like that. And as I said, throughout this course of time, Kiku kind of basically becomes like the little sister of the whole group. Now, one of the things I will address here is that Kiku is transgender. And Kiku is physically male, but it's described as having the heart of a woman. Or heart or soul of a woman, and therefore she identifies as a woman, kind of like for that setup. Eventually, I will probably end up talking about Yamato at some point in time, and I'll do my whole thought about what's going on with Yamato. But for Kiku, Kiku seems to have almost always identified as like a girl, because that's what she's been referred to as pretty much the entire time in the series that we have known her. So I don't know if that was something that she kind of just started to feel very early on in life, and then all of the ones around her, because Izo and all of the Scabbards are just like, yeah, sure, whatever, that's fine. Odin and the others are just like, yeah, sure, you're still Kiku, so it's fine. And they, so they're all fine with it. They're very accepting of her in that regard. And of course, Kiku ends up training to become a samurai. She becomes a swordswoman. And that's a very odd thing in Wano culture, because we don't really see any female samurai in Wano throughout pretty much the whole course. We see a couple of the members of it's the Oni Wabanshu, and then there's the other force that's associated with Orochi. And I think at least both of those have at least one female member, if not two. And then there's Shinobu, but Shinobu is a kunoichi. She is a female ninja, as opposed to a female samurai. We don't, it was very looked down upon for that, which is one of the things that goes on when it comes to Kuina, which ties into, like Kuina's story with the fact that, her grandfather, Kozuboro, is from Wano, and then her father, Koshiro, he's been raised in that mindset that, men are naturally stronger than women and all that other stuff. Whereas Kiku is very much proved throughout the course of, fighting against Kaido when they fight against him, which I'll talk about later in this video, and then everything we see her do throughout Wano, and then in the Battle of Onigashima itself and everything. She proves that she is very strong in her own right. And I think something that would be interesting, probably not going to happen, but would have been interesting, would have been if like Kiku had somehow shown up at Shimosuke Village, and like when Kuina was young, because like if she hadn't traveled forward in time, then that could have been a thing that happened, or a slightly more likely thing that happened. That Kiku could have somehow shown up there and then like proven all of the men in the village wrong, all the men at the dojo wrong, that yes, Kuina can be an amazing swordswoman. It doesn't matter if she's male or female. She's strong in spirit, and that's what counts here. Strong in will and everything else like that. That would have been like a really good role model for like Kuina to have. And I think they would have gotten along very well, if you ask me. um, all of that. I think that would have been great. So I'll touch on that a little bit here. But so basically, what ends up happening over the next couple of years is Kiku and Izo become part of Odin's traveling band of travelers, and eventually they pick up Raizo and Kanjuro as they travel, and then they eventually make their way to the Kuri region. And Odin goes off and tries to fight against Ashura Doji. I say try, he very much succeeds in fighting Ashura Doji, and that results in the other future Scabbards, the retainers, show up and they're trying to stop him, but they're too late. Odin has already defeated Ashura Doji, and as of conquering Ashura Doji, he is now basically the new one in charge of all of the different gangs that are in the Kuri region. And from there, he then starts to reform the Kuri region to make it better, to start having them all work together, stop fighting against each other, and to start to actually protect and work alongside the citizens that live there. Which leads to his father, which leads to Sugiyaki then proclaiming Odin as the daimyo of the Kuri region, and then this then ends up making all of his followers his now retainers. And so that's basically how that starts out there. They move into the castle, or they build the castle and then move into it. And then, they're all really happy. And then a few years later, about 6 years later, is when Odin brings home Inarashi, Nekomamushi, and Kawamatsu. And this just basically results in they are now adopted into the family. They're more strays that followed Odin home after he saves them. And Kiku, we see Kiku playing with a cat's tail with Nekomamushi, just like, swinging it around in front of him, waving it around in front of him for him to like bat at, which is just adorable. And I like that we kind of get like that double callback there with Nekomamushi, because earlier on when they were in Zou, Robin does something similar to Nekomamushi with like distracting him while Chopper's like checking out his wounds and everything, which is just funny. So we get that adorable little callback there. Also, he's a cat, so yeah. Can I help you? Love you. You're a good girl. You guys want to see the baby? There. Baby! Puppy. Well, that was an appropriate interstitial because, I was talking about Inarashi and Nekomamushi. Pet. Baby! I don't know if we ever see a pit bull mink in Wano or in Zou, but that would be kind of cute. Because Inarashi's not a pit bull. He's like some other type of dog. But, so what ends up happening is, of course, they're still there, and then sometime later is when it lines up for when the other retainers, all the other retainers, minus Kiku, they specifically state that Kiku is not there, they go to the Hakumai region and try to steal money from Yasuie. And I already went over Yasuie several times with all this. He tells them, take this money and use it to better yourselves. He also, he doesn't, he at least says, well, at least you didn't bring Kiku with you and get her in trouble with all of this. She doesn't deserve that, basically, is what he says. Which is just funny. And Kiku's like, what happened that night from Kiku's perspective, or during that time frame? What did they tell her? It's like, don't tell Lord Odin this, but, we're going to be gone for a couple of days. Where are you going? We're going to go visit one of the other daimyo and ask them for help. Because Lord Odin needs some advice and some money. And Kiku's like, okay. Did she figure out what they were going to do? I don't know. Maybe she overheard them discussing it at some point in time. But they all head off to the Hakumai region to try to steal money from Yasuie, which they almost succeed in, but then he catches them and then he gives them more money and says, use this to better yourselves and everything else like that. And then, of course, they all take Yasuie's advice, and of course, Kiku is brought in on this, and they spend the next several years training and improving themselves. You know, they educate themselves in reading and writing and arithmetic and, you know, history of Wano and culture and stuff like that, so they can be the best, you know, politically minded Scabbards and stuff like that, retainers that they can be for Odin and reflect well upon him. They also physically train themselves more, get themselves weapons. This might be when some of them get their signature swords. Now that I think about it, I don't remember if we ever get a name on Kiku's sword. I think I looked that up, and I don't think I found anything for what her sword was named. But I'll double check that and make sure, because she uses it a lot more in the next two videos, so I'll probably double check just to make sure. But I don't remember if her sword has a specific name or not. But so during this whole time frame, you know, they're studying and improving themselves, much to Odin's chagrin, as he's just like, stop talking properly, that's freaking me out, stop doing that. But they still have moments where it's just like, you know, where they all act like siblings and they're all bickering over like, yeah, no, this is the best part of the Odin, no, this is the best part of the Odin, and you're crazy, you're out of your mind, this is the best part of the Odin, and all this other stuff. They're all just like arguing over their favorite foods and everything else like that, where it's just like all siblings just bickering with each other, with Odin in the background just probably like, oh my god, these guys are gonna make me pull my hair out. So they go through all of that and everything, and they train and train and train, and eventually they achieve, you know, they are very proud of the status they have received of, you know, as much all the skills that they basically leveled up in that time frame. And then we get to 30 years ago, where all of them accompany Odin as he goes to the flower capital to see his father, to see Sukeyaki at that point in time. And it ends up being Odin's last visit with his father, as I've already gone over several times. And, you know, they're all there accompanying him and showing him, you know, putting their best foot forward to the citizens of Wano, and probably vastly improving Odin's, you know, status and stuff like that, you know, people's opinions of Odin at that point in time. To be fair, Odin's own actions in helping fix up Curry have already improved the citizens of Wano's opinion of him, particularly the citizens of the flower capital's opinion of him, because they didn't have the best opinion of him to begin with. From there, we have it that during that same year is when the Whitebeard pirates end up actually, you know, secretly, unfortunately, landing in Wano, or crashing in Wano. And they end up having to stay there for a little while because, well, Odin goes and tries to fight against Whitebeard and get him to take him with him. Doesn't work. Kinemon and the others explain to Whitebeard why he can't take Odin with him, and he's like, that's fine, we won't take him with us, I have no intention of trying to kidnap a prince, we're good. And you know, and Kiku and the others end up, you know, kind of befriending the Whitebeard pirates. They spend some time with them over the next 2 weeks, and then of course it gets to the night where the Whitebeard pirates are leaving. Odin sneaks away, Izo goes after him, tries to stop him, and ends up getting dragged along with him. Inarashi and Nekomamushi have been have stowed away on the Moby Dick as well, and have all four of them have now left Wano. And Kiku is just distraught by her brother's disappearance, because she's like, where'd my brother go? Which is a valid question, just a valid thought. That would freak me the F out if my sister just up and vanished. I would be so freaking scared if that happened, because I love my sister. I mean, it's terrible when anybody goes missing, obviously. But in this case, they're just like, Odin's gone, Izo's gone, Inarashi and Nekomamushi are all gone, and there's like no notes by any of them. But like the Scabbards put 2 and 2 together, they're like, okay, they're missing and the Whitebeard pirates left. So knowing Lord Odin, he probably went after the Whitebeard pirates, and Izo possibly went to try to stop him. Maybe Inarashi and Nekomamushi tried to help. They were just stowaways in all honesty, but you get the idea. Then, you know, for the next several years, basically, it's just Kiku, along with the rest of the Scabbards, are left in charge of trying to run the Curry region, because Odin's not there, and 3 of the other retainers are gone. So it's like, okay, well, we have to keep the curry region running while Odin's gone, because we don't want it to be like in ruins by the time he comes back. That'll just tarnish his name even more, which we don't need. And so they're like, okay, so they keep the curry region running as best as they can. Denjiro at some point has to go and like borrow money to help from other places, because of Orochi. And, eventually they're probably, Kiku's probably very angry when, like, Sukiyaki supposedly dies, and then Orochi becomes shogun, even though they're, like, at the time they're kind of under the impression that it's just supposed to be temporary until Odin returns, but they're like, no, we've dealt with Orochi enough. This is ridiculous. He should not be shogun. And they go through that, and then eventually Odin does show back up for a very short amount of time. This is when he drops off Toki along with the kids and Igarashi and Nekomamushi as well. And I can imagine from Kiku's perspective what is going on here. So the Moby Dick returns, or no, it's not the Moby Dick, it's the Roger Pirates, it's the Oro Jackson that shows up in Wano, and they're like, well, this is a different pirate ship. And then Odin walks off, and they're like, oh my god, Lord Odin, you're back! You have a wife and kids. Okay, that's great. Oh, good. Igarashi and Nekomamushi. Kiku's like, where's my brother? Where's Izo? And then Odin's like, so he's not here. He's still with Whitebeard. This is supposed to be a temporary setup here with me with the Roger Pirates. I'm helping them with something. And then I'm going to go back to the Whitebeard Pirates and, get Izo. Kiku's probably like, oh, so my brother's not with you. No. And I bet Odin felt a little bad about that, or at least I hope he did. All of that. But then, she takes her, Kiku takes her responsibility very seriously of trying to help take care of Toki, who is sick, and helping with, Momonosuke and Hiyori and everything. And, like, Igarashi and Nekomamushi are probably filling her in on stuff since they were there with the Whitebeard Pirates the whole time anyway. And probably filled her in on some stuff for what happened with Izo and everything, and explained to her that no, Izo wasn't trying to run away, and we figured Odin was gonna make his way onto the Moby Dick somehow, so we stowed away, and Izo tried to stop Odin, and that didn't go very well, and blah 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 blah. But here's a bunch of the adventures we've been on, and tells her that, and like Toki maybe tells her stuff. I went over this in the Izo videos. A little bit, where it's just like, well, they probably told her some of this stuff, because she probably had, questions and stuff like that and wanted to hear it. The other retainers at the time would have wanted to learn about what was going on in the outside world, for like all the adventures that their lord and their friends had been on. And then we get to 26 years ago when Odin fully returns to the country. And, because the first time it was drops family off, leaves, comes back several months later, and it's just like, okay, well, I'm staying here now. And then they explained to him what was going on, that, Toki, that Momonosuke and Toki were attacked by Orochi's forces, which of course just pisses Odin off. He tries to fight against Orochi, and then finds out that, no, you're not going to be able to fight against him because, A, I have a giant dragon on my side in the form of Kaido, and I have this guy here who can make barriers pop up around me and protect me. So, to be fair, the rest of the Scabbards know about, or the retainers know about Kaido. He's kind of hard to miss. The giant blue dragon that flies around the country at various points in time is kind of hard to miss. Along with all the beast pirates now crawling all over Wano at that point in time. But they don't know that, that Orochi has, barrier dude being able to protect him. And, so they're trying to find out from Odin why he is now dancing naked in the streets. And it's like every month, I think. And they're like, why are you doing this? And he never explains it to them. He's just like, I need to have money to support my family. I'm like, you're an idiot. So basically what ends up happening is, of course, during this time frame, it's, they keep trying to deal with the beast pirates. They keep having to put up with Orochi's shit and everything that he's thrown at them. Odin keeps dancing in the streets, which they are just, like, so sad about because they just see it as so dishonoring and everything. And, so they go through a bunch of that stuff. And that's over the course of the next 5 years. Then we get to when blank hits the fan. And this kind of all comes to a head when Hirogoro and his wife, Toka, are attacked. His wife is murdered along with a bunch of his subordinates, and Hirogoro is then thrown into Udon. And this is just the straw that breaks the camel's back. And, Oden is just, he's distraught about this because Hirogoro and his wife are very good friends of his. He'd known them for so long. He went to them for advice a lot and everything. They probably helped out his family a lot when he was gone with the Whitebeard pirates and everything. And what ends up happening is, of course, this is when they're like, okay, we're going to war, basically. And all the Scabbards are ready. This is when we have, like, when they, they have it's raining, and they're all, like, very stone-faced and very prepared to go fight, fight alongside Oden to fight against Kaido and everything. And that's where they head. And Kiku is, of course, part of this group. This is when they are dubbed the 9 Red Scabbards, because there's 9 of them, and they leave at sunset as they're bathed in the glow of the blood red sunlight as the sun is setting. And they head off and they make their way to the coast. They were trying to get to Onigashima. They made their way to the coast where they run into Kaido, and then they have the whole big battle with Kaido and his troops. I do not remember specifically who Kiku fights during this battle. I don't think we get a specific name for who she fights. I think, like a lot of the other Scabbards, she's just dealing with a lot of the riffraff. Because, as I keep stating, they had Kaido King and Queen at this point in time. Jack was a child. He wouldn't have been anywhere involved in this. And even, a lot of the other ones that were like the Tobi Roppo and stuff like that, they were not there yet. Or they were children in the case of Ulti and Page 1. But the other ones were not there yet. Even Black Maria would have been a child then. But the other, like the Tobi Roppo, weren't there and stuff like that. And like the other, headliners and different things like that, they were not there yet. It was a very basic version of Kaido's crew, but it was still strong because they had him, King, and Queen. And unfortunately, because of the trick played by Higurashi, Oden ends up distracted and tricked, and that allows Kaido to attack him, and that makes Kaido angry, but that defeats, Kaido, that defeats Oden and the Scabbards and everything. And they are then imprisoned and taken to the Flower Capital, where, 3 days later they are going to be boiled alive, because Oden is born to boil. That whole line. So we get to the day of the execution. And what ends up happening is, they get out, and Oden and the others are, led to the execution platform, which is the giant pot of boiling oil. And, they're brought out, and there's, like, crowds all over the place watching as this happened. I think it's being broadcast all over the country, possibly. I don't know if they had, like, the pond snail system set up at that point in time. They may not have. But, like, Kaido's there and Orochi's there as they're watching as all of this is happening and everything. And Oden, in an attempt to try to save his Scabbards, is like, if I get in the boiling pot of oil and then I hold the Scabbards above my head, we are all technically in the boiling pot of oil. And if they survive an hour, then they get to live. And, Kaido's like, fine, I agree to this. And, and that's what happens. Oden gets into the boiling pot of oil, grabs the plank that the other Scabbards are on and has them over his head, or he does this and then he asks Kaido if this counts for them all being in the oil, and Kaido's like, yeah. So for the next hour, the hour of legend, as it's referred to, the legendary hour, Oden holds the Scabbards above his head, and they're all just begging him to stop doing this, because it's just causing him more pain from having to support all 9 of them on his back while he's, standing in this boiling oil and being boiled alive and everything. And he doesn't. And while all of that's going on, Shinobu is revealing to the crowd what actually has been going on, that Odin has been dancing to try to protect them, and then to protect them from Orochi and Kaido and everything, and that Orochi, has, been pulling all these horrible strings all over the country for the past, so many years, and all this other stuff. And during this time frame, that just turns the tide of the crowd, and that turns the country's opinions about Odin, and it flips them. It makes them so they're like, oh my God, he was trying to protect us and everything else like that. He has been, loyal and an amazing daimyo and everything else like that, and he's, been doing everything he can to protect us. And to the best of his ability and everything else like that. And that turns the crowd, the population's faith back to Odin, which of course Loki, Odin, Orochi despises. I'll get to the right name eventually. Loki's on the brain because of Elbath. That Orochi despises this idea, and he hates the fact that, oh my God, he's turning the crowd against me and everything else like that. So what ends up happening is Orochi is like, screw it, I'm changing the execution. It's just before the end of the hour. He's like, screw it, I'm changing the execution to firing squad. And he, this climaxes with Odin chucking the plank that has all the scabbards on it. They go flying, they run, they start running and making their way to Curry. Odin is executed, unfortunately, and his last words to the Scabbards are, open the borders of Wano and everything else, open the borders of Wano and to prepare. And they head off and they run to Curry. During the way to Curry, several things happen. Shinobu shows up and has the keys to release their cuffs, so that frees them that way. She also gives them their weapons back because she managed to steal all of them because Shinobu is awesome. I'll get to her eventually in these videos. And she then, she joins them. I think Shinobu goes and does something else to try to help with stuff. But as they're going along, Kiku and, I believe it's Kiku and Kinemon, end up fighting against some of the other beast pirate riffraff as they're making their way there. The group gets split up. Ashura Doji and Denjiro end up having to deal with Kaido at one point. Inarashi and Nekomamushi get attacked by one of the numbers, and all of that. And then the other part of the group, Kiku, Kinemon, Raizo, and Kanjuro, and Kawamatsu all end up making their way to Curry, to the castle, where it is on fire, and Toki is waiting for them. And Toki says, okay, I am going to need you to follow this plan that I have. And what you're going to do is, you guys are going to, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to send Momonosuke into the future with several of you, and then Hiyori is going to stay here in the past, or stay here in the present, and grow up normally with one of you guarding her. And of course, the split ends up being Kawamatsu stays with Hiyori, and the other four, Kiku, Kinemon, Kanjuro, and Raizo, get sent into the future, are going to get sent in the future 20 years with Momonosuke. And, Toki's like, in 20 years' time, you'll show back up here, and you will, find allies and be able to use that to, to your advantage to try to defeat Kaido. And, you can resurrect the Kozuki family and return it to the throne, as it should be. And so they're like, okay. And I'll go over, like, Momonosuke's perspective of this a little bit later, but, like, Kiku doesn't like that. Kiku is like, yes, I'll go with this idea because it's the only idea that we have at this point in time. And, she's already resigned herself probably to the fact that she's probably not going to see her brother again for a long time. But she's like, okay, that's not important at the moment. Protecting Lord Momonosuke, the Momonosuke and such, the ones that we have sworn our lives to now that, Odin is dead, we will do this. And Toki uses her powers and sends them into the future, which is where I will pick up with the next video. But that's what I have here for Kiku's first part of her life. Next video will be over from when they arrived in the future up until just before the Battle of Onigashima. So I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!